pull your stomach in because it's Easter. You know, when you come in here, welcome everybody on television. When you come in here, many of you have not ever really been exposed to quote-unquote Eastern thought. And most of the churches, just every church down to every single one up and down the highway would warn you about exposing yourself to this type of stuff because, you know, it's Eastern in nature, and Christianity is against this. But, of course, what's today? What is their holiest day? Is it Wester? Do they say Happy Wester? That reminds me, I had a, happy, in your Wester bonnet. Well, it could be. There was, in fact, yesterday there was I'm going to tell you a joke, so I don't really think this is true, but there was a rabbit in our refrigerator. And and the way Joan's been cooking lately, anything is possible. And there was a rabbit in the refrigerator. And I opened up and I said, what are you doing in here? He says, isn't this a Westinghouse? I says, well, it is, yes. He said, well, I'm Westing. So this is not... This is not what? What's the other one? Oh, okay, that would really be appropriate. There was another rabbit in our driveway and crying, and you could see the rabbit's jaw was all swollen. It was really not looking good. So I said, what's the matter, rabbit? And the rabbit said, I have a toothache. I said, well, go to the dentist. He says, I can't. I said, well, what's the matter? He said, well, the dentist will give me Novocaine. I said, well, what's wrong with taking Novocaine? He says, I'm an ether bunny. They're two of my top jokes, so you can see where it's going from here. Yeah. What is that?
Sean said it's a good thing she didn't bring any eggs with her.
Okay. I think so. Let me take you back to the origin of the day that you're celebrating today. That we ought to start there. The origin of Easter starts with a very strange name. Sounds like more like somebody you'd meet in a Mexican restaurant, but her name was Melita. Melita was originally the Virgin Mother. Melita was the Virgin Mother, the Queen of the universe. And through an immaculate conception in Greek mythology, she gave birth. There's actually to this day in Cyprus, Greece, a temple to Melita, the Virgin Mother. If you ever go on a trip to Greece, you can go into Cyprus and see that. But of a virgin, she conceived, gave birth to her son, whose name was Tammuz. And Tammuz came to the earth to save all of the souls, to save everybody. In Greek, he is known as Adonis. And in Latin, and you can see it in the Bible, one of the words of God, Adonai. Okay. And he actually came to earth, but he was killed and went into the lower realms and had to be rescued and brought out of the lower realms, out of the depths of hell, if you would. And the only one that could bring him up was his consort, his sister, whose name was Ishtar, pronounced Easter. Now, all what I'm telling you, you can look up in an encyclopedia. That's basically the origin of all of this, was that out of the virgin birth of Melita, there came Tammuz. Tammuz went into the netherworld and was raised out of the netherworld by his sister, whose name was Easter. See? And she filled Tammuz through the Holy Spirit, and as she rose, gave Tammuz, came rising up into that which was the earth. And this is the interesting part. When Tammuz was conceived in his second birth, he rose out of a gray-colored egg. He rose out of a gray-colored egg. Now, if you trace into the mythology, the Greek mythology of this, there's something else that's very interesting. Tammuz was originally born on December the 25th. Okay? And there's a reason for that. All of the sun gods are born on December the 25th. Every sun god is born on December the 25th because the sun is born on December the 25th. Okay? Now, his resurrection out of the gray-colored egg happened at the time of the spring equinox, right now. There's a reason for that. Can't happen any other time. Has to happen at the spring equinox. Now, in the Bible, the people actually celebrated the resurrection of Tammuz. What happens after this, and we'll cover it a little beyond this, in the actual adoration of Tammuz, it got a little deep in sexual things. But the resurrection of Tammuz was celebrated, and what would happen is for 40 days prior to Tammuz coming out of the gray-colored egg, the women would pour ashes on their head and cry and be in great mourning. When Tammuz would rise out of the gray-colored egg, the men would come out of the temple and face the ocean and adore the sun which would rise out of the sea. And that to them was there's references to this, if you have those little Bibles with you, on page 683. For those of you who are using regular Bibles, in the book of Ezekiel, okay, page 683, book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel chapter 8, and if you look with me, you'll see how the Bible refers to this. So there's different, when you have biblical interpretation, you have different groups, you have different clans, different cliques, different cults, and so forth. Some were for this and some were not. Obviously, the group that wrote this didn't think this was such a good idea. Ezekiel chapter 8, and if you look with me to verse 14, then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. That's our boy right here, okay? That's our boy. That's the origin of this whole thing, Tammuz. Now, the origin of sunrise services, and the reason that you have these Easter sunrise services where they all go to the boardwalk or down at Jenkinson's Pavilion or wherever they go to watch the sun come up. If you look also in verse 14, in verse 15, he says, I'll show you greater abominations. And in verse 16, he brought me to the inner court, and at the door of the temple between the porch and the altar were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards the east, and they worshiped the sun rising from the east. And that was the origin of sunrise services. Melita was the virgin mother. Tammuz was the young warrior who came as the god-man, was killed by the people, went into the netherworld, was raised up by Ishtar. Ishtar rose out of a gray-colored egg, and that's where all of this stuff started. And for 40 days, in fact, what you call Lent today, what they called in those days was Count 40. And for 40 days, the women would have to weep and wail, and they put ashes on their head. And today, in the Catholic Church, there's still a remnant of that where they have Ash Wednesday, and they'll put ashes on their head. And then, of course, the men would go out, and there'll be the sunrise service. That's where it came from. Now, why is this dangerous? And I am not against having Easter. I'm not against the holidays. I think they're great, and go out to dinner and celebrate them. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you confuse the Easter with actually the Passover, then you've done a terrible disservice to yourself and your family, because you've actually set your life in for destruction. The universe, nature, celebrates Passover. You cannot have the spring flowers unless the Passover. There must be the Passover or winter to the Advent through the spring equinox of spring. You must harmonize yourself with nature. And what the church did by destroying Passover and focusing on Easter is they took away from us totally the knowledge that within ourselves that sun must rise and there must be the same exact thing happening within us as happens outside. And that's why it's so dangerous. And the reason that you've seen bombs dropping for as long as bombs can drop, and children dying from all kinds of diseases and drugs and buy-ins and violence, is because people have never understood the Passover. And the only reason in the universe today that Christianity celebrates the Passover is because Christianity is anti-Semitic. There is no other reason. And Constantine declared, never again will there be a coincidence between the resurrection of Jesus and the Passover of the Jews. And the Great Inquisition started where the Jews had their throat cuts if they didn't claim Jesus Christ. And Easter is simply a statement that we are anti-Semites. We want nothing to do with the Jews. We want nothing to do with Passover. And they had nothing to do with the Jews. They had nothing to do with Passover. And actually understanding the mystical, spiritual Passover, that has never passed away from them. And all of the violence and the destruction of the planet Earth and nature and itself is a testimony to the fact that we have turned our back on the teachings of God and caught up with the traditions of men. Passover. As you know, according to the Bible, God said, you take into the house, you eat the lamb, and then God slays the firstborn of the Egyptians. It never happened. It never, ever happened. There's no group of people that keeps records more beautifully than the Egyptians. There was not one record of Passover. There was no firstborn killed by anybody. No children were killed. No one's. Passover, the real Passover, is the most important thing in your life. And this is why in talking with you today, that I ask you to try to follow with me, and I'll try to go slow, but try to understand why this is so important for you, for yourself, for your health, for your family. You want fear to pass over from you. You want sickness to pass over from you. You want all of the trials of life to pass over from you, but yet you won't celebrate it. You won't understand it. You won't allow yourself inward so that the sun can rise and consume that lamb within you. And that's because you've been taught all of your life about Easter bunnies and Easter eggs, and you've been taught all of your life about a God who raises himself from the dead in this particular day. But remember that quote-unquote God said, the things that I do, you can do, and you should do, and you can do better than me. And if he rose, then you should too. And instead of focusing on one man, we must focus on ourselves. You know what I was thinking the other day was interesting? Something that I could never deal with all of my life was this. God is omniscient. God is omnipresent. God can hear everything. God knows everything. God knows every thought. God hears everything you say. And all of my life, I was like, this is ridiculous. If he's listening to her, but if he is the mind, if he is the human mind, then indeed every thought is known by God because God is the mind. Every word that's spoken is known by God because God is the mind. And when I show you this, and when I'll show you what we'll find out together, you'll see here that when you celebrate Easter as a holiday and have dinner, that's one thing. But keeping the Passover and allowing the sun to rise and consume the lamb is something totally different and totally important for you. So why is Passover so important? The reason Passover is so important is because Passover has nothing to do with religion. Passover is cosmic. Okay? And if nature does it, you've got to do it. Passover is totally cosmic. Let me show you something. Go to page 56 in the little Bibles and the book of Exodus, okay? Exodus chapter 12. And I'll show you what this is all about. And this is why it's so important. And the reason, my friends, the reason there is so much hell been raised on this planet Earth for as long as you've been born and forever, as long as people have walked on it, is because people have been out of touch with the cosmic universal house that is God. Out of touch with nature, out of touch with the stars, out of touch with that which is the movement of the universe. We've ignored it, and we've taken up a book, and we've been listening to fairy tales and acting them out. And that's what the problem is. Watch it. Exodus chapter 12. Now on page 56, if you look at verse 3, okay? In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. You take the lamb into your house, okay? Let me show you what this is. Why? First of all, ask yourself, you're grown people, you're intelligent people, you just listen to this stuff and say, oh, well, that's nice. Why? Why do you have to go into the house with the lamb? The reason you have to go into the house with the lamb, what is happening today as we're sitting here in nature, in the cosmos, okay? The sun is entering into the house of Aries, the lamb, the ram. That's why. That's the only reason. Because the very next thing that has to happen, if you see in verse 8 of Exodus 12, okay, is you eat not of it raw, but roast it. Roast the lamb. What's happening now? What's roasting the lamb? What is the burnt offering? The sun in the sky is the fire. And at this time of the year, it enters and consumes the lamb, Aries. And unless that happens, you'll have no flowers, you'll have no roses, you'll have no new bunnies, you'll have no new life. The sun must enter into the house and consume the lamb. The fire must consume the lamb. It's the burnt offering. That's Passover. And now I'll show you something else. Because this is not just what the sun has to do in the sky. See, nature knows. Nature knows about Passover. That's why you're seeing buds come out on the trees now. Nature never fails to keep the Passover. The sun never fails to enter the house of Aries. The sun never fails to consume the burnt offering of the lamb, Aries. Never. Nature knows, and that's why you have summertime coming. See? Let me show you something else in that verse 8. And Exodus 12, verse 8. Okay, Exodus 12, roast with fires, 12:8. And look at that next one, unleavened bread. Why? Why? Because unleavened bread. Leavening is that which putrefies. Leavening is that which makes go bad. Leavening was that which makes everything rise. And you must not have anything inside of the house. What is this talking about? Inside of your house is here. Inside of your mind. Inside of your consciousness. Point to this. You know what this is other than a fat in your belly? You know what that is? That's a solar plexus. That's the place of the sun. The place of the sun. And the solar sun must be allowed to rise, just like it's happening out in the sky now, up to the pineal gland of the brain. And there will consume Aries, which is the pineal gland, and there must be no leaven. There must be none of your thoughts to putrefy, none of your thoughts to make bad. Everything must be cleaned out of the house. It must be virgin. It must be pure. Or as Jesus Christ would say, take no thought. Huh? That's Passover. That's Passover. And you know what happens today? Do you know what's happening right now? When the sun rose out of the bowels of the earth, which happens December the 25th, do you know that? Did you know that the sun starts its movement up to Aries on December the 25th? It's born that day out of the winter solstice. Did you know that? And did you know that when the sun rises up and it consumes the lamb, right now, right while we're sitting here, in the northern hemisphere, the sun sits in the eastern sky, or the right hand, the right side. It sits at the right hand of the Father, and all new life comes to the earth. See? And do you know what happens inside of you? When you have purged out all of that leaven, all of that which rots and causes you the thoughts that we get in your meditation, and the fire from the solar plexus rises up and consumes the lamb, which is Aries, it then sits at the right side of the right hemisphere of the brain, and new life comes to you. All that has been dormant in the winter of your soul bursts forth. New life comes to you. Do you see what I'm talking about? So you see, if you follow somebody that died, or if you have a bonnet, and that's all fun, and if you have candy and jelly beans, and I like that too. But brother, if you don't understand the Passover, and if you don't go into your house, and if you don't take that which is the fire of the solar plexus and roast that which is the pineal and the sacrifice of the lamb, then you'll never have that sun sitting at the right side, and your life will be forever in the winter of the soul. The season will be winter until you agree to keep the Passover, because summer cannot come unless the sun in the sky keeps the Passover. And you are part of nature. You are what is called the macrocosm. In here is exactly the same as out there, and that's why you have a solar plexus. That's why you have a pineal gland, which is Aries. You have a solar plexus, which is the sun, and the two must work. You have a right side, just like the sun, and the two must work together, just like it does in the universe. And if they do, you're in harmony with the universe. That's why the Tibetan monks sit and they go Om. And the reason they're going Om is because they are getting in touch with the sound of the universe. And when you have a chance, just take your fingers, put them in your ears, and you'll hear Om. And that's the sound of the universe. And the sound that is in the center of you is the exact same sound that's in the center of the universe. And when you become in harmony with that through meditation, then the angel of death will pass over you, and the winter of your soul will give way to spring and sunshine, flowers and light. And the days will be lighter, and the darkness will flee from your house when you keep the Passover of the soul, which is meditation. Huh? So it says in Exodus chapter 12, you're right there, verse 12. I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn. Now, come on. Is this the God you want to follow? This is the God you've been following all of your life? He kills the firstborn children of people he doesn't even know. And then you know what he did? He has to find a way to forgive you. You know, oh, I got to forgive these people. Well, how can I do this? It's very hard to forgive them. After all, they smoke and they drink and they go to Trump Castle. How am I going to forgive these people? Oh, my goodness gracious, I know what I'll do. I'll slaughter some young guy. Boy, that'll be bloody and gory, but boy, that'll make me. So he nails this guy to a cross, shoves a spear in his side, slams his back with, and gets this thing on his head, and he's bleeding and gory, and he's naked, and all of this, and the guy sits up and has, I like it, man, they're all forgiven. Is he done? Oh, no. Not according to our teachers, he's not done. He's got one more trick up his heavenly sleeve. You know what it's called? Armageddon. Am I going to get you? I'm going to give atomic bombs to the Russians. And they're going to, and guys, Christians write books about all of this crap. This is the God that they follow. Kills the firstborn of the kids, slaughters this young guy in his terrible execution, and now is preparing Armageddon. And he's going to wipe everybody out. And this is our Heavenly Father. Don't you love this guy? Don't you want to go in and say, oh, I love you, Lord? Sure, don't get me involved in this. Why are they all going to church? Because they don't want to get involved. They don't want to be around for the Armageddon. They want to go and fly away. Hey, you know what Armageddon is? Fire coming down from heaven to destroy the earth. You know what that means? You know what heaven is? Inside of you. And you know what the fire is? The fire is the Spirit which comes down to burn up all of the fear and all of the hate and all of the hurt and all of the guilt and all of the disease. It's fire, it's Spirit which comes down from the higher mind to burn up everything that is hurting you. That's Armageddon. Huh? And the crucifixion is a whole other story, and we'll get to that. But what about smiting the firstborn? The word smite means, boy, I'm going to, belt you. I'm going to knock the, The firstborn are your thoughts. It's always the firstborn male, because that which comes out of the mind is male. That which comes out of the spirit is female. And the first thing that comes out of your mind before you do anything fakakta are thoughts. Before you do anything, it starts as a thought. And what is going to be killed on Passover? The thoughts that are trying to do you in. I will kill all the firstborn of the Egyptians, and in mysticism, Egypt means the land of bondage, which is the lower carnal mind. No young kids that are Egyptians are going to get killed. It never happened. It's a ridiculous thing. But people who read literally think that's what this quote-unquote God did. It means I will destroy these thoughts that are trying to destroy you. I will destroy the thoughts. Look what I'm trying to say to you. The firstborn. Go with me to page 942. The earth. Did you ever see this? While you're looking for that, did you ever see what I'm talking about? Did you ever see this? Adam and Eve. Do you know that there was no two English people in this primeval place? Do you know that the word Adam is the same as the word atom? Want me to tell you something nice on it? I won't tell you today, because I'll let that go. It is. No. Oh, all right. In Memphis, Egypt, the legend is, how did God create life if there was no lady? He masturbated. God masturbated, and the seed fell on the earth, and the firstborn was Atom. See? Don't you see? When you take Adam and Adam, it's the same thing. The center, the earth, life is that. When God took a rib out of Adam to make Eve, when you take an electron out of an atom, you multiply energy. When he took a rib out of Adam, he made Eve and multiplied the population. What the Bible is simply telling you that all life started with the splitting of the atom. What's wrong with that? Oh, we can't have that. That makes sense. Jesus, we can't have that in religion. But do you understand that? Okay, so Adam means the earth. Eve is the spirit. The woman is the spirit. That's why this is the age of the woman, because it's the age of spirit. See? So the first thing that comes is the body, the physical, the earth. Then comes that which is the mind, the thoughts, the spirit. Look what I'm showing you here, and the reason I'm showing you this is when I talk about smiting the firstborn, you're talking about that which comes out of the mind, that which comes out of the human mind, which is male. Page 942. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and you'll see that the Apostle Paul supports this when he says the first man is of the earth. That's your human thoughts out of the carnal mind. The second man is the Lord from heaven. That's with the spirit that comes out of the divine mind. So when it says that you smite the firstborn, you're smiting or you're killing the thoughts that come out of the lower mind. You're killing the thoughts that come out of the carnal mind. Okay? So what happens? You come out of the bondage land, which is the carnal mind of Egypt, right? You've gone through this cosmic Passover through meditation. You got to do this. I don't care if you don't do it here, you don't do it here. But do it in the bathroom. Do it wherever you can do it. Do it. Keep the Passover. Run the water. They'll never know what you're doing in there, but just do it. See? And allow that energy to come out. Just stop everything. Allow the leaven to be cleaned out, the thoughts to be cleaned out, and the energy from the solar plexus will rise up to the pineal gland of the brain, and it will open the right hemisphere of the brain, and then new life will start to come to you, new ways, and it's a very personal thing. You don't have to give anybody any money. You don't have to join any church. You don't have to read anything. You just do it. You keep this within yourself. And then they come out of the land of bondage, which is Egypt, which means you come out of the mind, which is controlling you. You come across the wilderness of meditation. You come to the churning Red Sea, which is the churning emotions of the mind, trying to drive you back. There's always the emotions which rage and roar, and they try to drive you back. But Moses looks up, okay? And the reason it's the Red Sea is because the word red in mysticism means the emotions. That's why the devil's always in a red suit, you know, with horns. The horns are power. The red is emotions, and the devil is simply the power of the emotions. But you come to that Red Sea, you look up, and the sea parts, and you cross over to the promised land. Hey, this is good stuff. You know why it's exciting? Because doggone it, it's true. It's true. And you know what else? I can prove it. And how can I prove it? Because when you go home, take a look at the trees, and you'll see little buds starting to come out at the end. Passover has taken place. The burnt offering, God is satisfied. Everything is born again. I can prove it. Huh? Now, what causes, you see, when you look, where did that thing go? Where did it go? Here it is. When you look north, east is always on the right side. Okay? What caused the Red Sea? What causes that churning emotions to open up so you can cross over to the Promised Land? Watch what I'll show you. Go to page 59. Look at the book of Exodus. No, yeah, page 59. Book of Exodus, chapter 50. What? Yeah. Is there a page 59 there? Well, I got it all screwed up here. But anyhow, somebody, where's the part with the Red Sea parts? Exodus 14, page 58. Okay, and okay. Okay. Verse 21. How did I get that? Verse 29. Verse 21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind. The Spirit comes from the right side, causes the sea of the churning emotions to open up so that you can cross over into the Promised Land. See? But when you're consumed with Easter, you miss the reality of Passover. And the point that I'm making today is that the sun and the sky and the sun inside of you are one and the same. This is the sad part. You ready for this? 99 probably % of Christians and Jews have never kept the Passover. Oh, sure, they have a holiday, but they've never kept the Passover within. And you know want to hear the funny part? The Passover has been kept faithfully by Hindus and Buddhists. Hindus and Buddhists have kept the Passover. Christians know nothing about it. Know nothing about it. Say, why is it? Why? If what I'm saying to you is not, well, then why is this in the spring? Why does this have to be celebrated? Why did Passover have to be celebrated in Nisan, which is April? Why does Easter have to be celebrated in April? Why? Because it's the spring equinox. It's when the sun enters into the house of the Lamb and consumes the Lamb and sits at the right side and open. It's because it has to happen cosmically. You're here because of a cosmic event that is occurring between the sun and Aries. It's the only reason you're here. It's the only reason, the only way it can happen. It has to happen in April. It has to happen in the spring equinox. The sun consumes the Lamb in the house of Aries. It cannot happen any other time. So by following Easter, we've missed life. We have not purged, and you know doggone well, you're talking about purging the leaven out of your house, leaven are the thoughts of your mind. Try to take 30 seconds without a thought coming into your mind. You want to try for 30 seconds? Here, let's go. And I know what you're thinking right now. This guy's a real jerk. What's he talking about? My mother's going to get ticked off when she hears there's no Easter. Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to have Easter dinner. I don't care what he says. All this crap goes on. And it all goes through your mind. You know what I'm saying to you? And this is the way it is. But instead, we have allowed ourselves to be filled with the leaven of religion. And look at the world. Look at the... You know what Jesus Christ said? Jesus says, wisdom is known by her children. Look at the world. How many bombs have to drop on the earth before it falls apart? How many little children have to starve to death? How many people have to be tortured to death by the violence in this earth? How many people in this great God bless America place? Why do you have to have a drug outreach center in every town in the United States? Why? You got more drug outreach center than you have AMP. Why is it that teenage suicide is the second leading killer of teenage people? Why? Because we have filled with the leaven of religion and we have never kept the Passover. We've never studied to understand what it means. We've never, you know why? Because religion has told you, don't worship nature. Don't get involved with nature. Read the Bible. Read the Bible. Just read the book. And so we read the Bible, and we totally were left out of nature. We never knew what nature was doing. We never paid any attention to it. We never knew that nature kept the Passover, and that's why we had summertime. Oh, we love summertime to come so we could put our shorts on and go frolicking in the ocean, or go take a dip, or do all of those things out in the pool, or sit in the back and swing and swang and all of this stuff. But we never started. This is all happening because nature kept the Passover. And I never did. And so inside I'm all screwed up because I've never kept the Passover. I've never been in harmony with nature. Let me show you something. Go to page 793. I want to quote Jesus Christ. Religion. Oh. Boy, they don't like me, but I can tell you when you see them, the feeling is mutual. He don't like you either. Jesus Christ. What did he say? Matthew 16, verse 6. Then Jesus said, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they said, what the heck is he talking about? And look what they said in verse 7. We don't have any bread. And Jesus says, what are you talking about? You didn't bring any bread, you dummy. And then he said in verse 12, it says, they understood, then he bade them, beware not of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Brother, that's what you got to be aware of, because the Pharisees and Sadducees are alive and well, and they got people screwed up all over the planet Earth. And they're not just Christians and Jews, because the Shakyamuni Buddha is not Buddhism, the Hare Krishna is not Krishna, Jesus is not Christians. The origin of these things have been disrupted and destroyed by men. Pour out. Look what it says on page 934. The Apostle Paul says, and this is what I want you to see. We got a dog home that's filled with tumors. But I think the tumors have made her younger. She runs out, she's great, you know, and the more tumors she gets, it seems like she gets stronger. And that's it, bumps all over the place. And this is what we need to do. And I think she's a story of Passover because the Apostle Paul says on page 934, on 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7, purge out therefore the whole leaven that you may be a new lump. You ought to be a new lump. And I know you're looking at me and say, boy, he does look a little lumpy. No, you're not. Take a look at yourself. You're pretty much a lump yourself. But look what I want to show you. You ready for this now? Huh? Are you ready for this? You with me on this? Purge out, therefore, the old leaven that you may be a new lump. Now watch this. As you are unleavened, for even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed. Does it say Christ our Easter bunny? It says Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Huh? Wow. There's one place the word Easter is used in the whole Bible. It's in the book of Acts. When the church of the Middle Ages started messing with the Bible, they put the word Easter in there because if you look at it and you look at the Greek, it says Pascha, P-A-S-C-H-A, which means Passover. But they couldn't do it because they were on an anti-Semitic binge at that time. The Passover has... So how is Easter celebrated? Remember I told you about Melita and Tammuz? I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I might have been, in the early days, I didn't go to church, but if I would... This, I'll tell you, do you know why everybody comes to church on Easter? The people in those days would come to church, and they would celebrate the resurrection of Tammuz, and they would have eggs and bunnies and chicks in the temple. Talking about chicks in the temple. The ladies who would come to church would be required to wear only the Easter bonnet. That's it. Just your bonnet, ladies. Because the ladies would be then required to act as prostitutes in the temple, and there would be great sexual orgies in the Temple of Babylon on Easter. That's why the place was packed. I mean, you couldn't find a place to lay down, sit down in that. I mean, it was all. I'm telling you what I'm telling you. That's what they did. So all you'd have to wear, ladies, is the Easter bonnet, and then some guy would come trotting up the aisle, and say, oh my goodness, praise God, hallelujah, hallelujah, and then off you go. That's how Easter was celebrated in Babylon. Sexual orgies and all of that stuff, and that's your day, and that's why the place is packed. Everybody's coming. Did I ever tell you that I dare not tell them about Osiris and the steeple, do I? Why not? Because when you leave here, and I want you just to have, this is one thing, you're going to forget everything I said today. But one thing you will not forget, because when you drive up the highway, you're going to see all these churches. But see, in those days, sex was not considered, it was not weird or dirty. When Osiris died, his body was chopped up into 14 parts. And his wife Isis went looking all over for it, and the one part she was looking for, she couldn't find. But she made a bronze cast of this and had multiple bronze casts made of Osiris' private part in its erected state. She then sent them to all the temples in Egypt and said, you are to display this in the most prominent place of the temple. When you go past the church and take a look at the steeple, think of Osiris, because that's exactly what it is. In fact, in the temple, the church, the altar is the head, and the part where the congregation sits is called the nave, N-A-V-E, which is the navel, and the steeple is old Osiris. Whoa! All right. Anyhow, so that I know I can see the wives and the husbands driving down, like, there's one area, going down the town. But let me. That's what went on. But let me talk about. Let me talk about real quick. Let's just talk about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. All right. I just want to put something into your head to think about. That is, if the people who killed Jesus Christ were working in the will of God, then indeed are they not also responsible for your salvation? I mean, if the people were working in the will of God, and it says in the Bible that it was his will that he came here to die, then the people who actually killed him were working in the will of God. So you not only have to thank Jesus for your salvation, you have to thank the people that killed him for your salvation. Because if nobody killed him, what would he do? Can you see him sitting there? What am I going to do? Jesus, it's getting late. He's brought me back, and I got to be back, and nobody's going to kill me. Hey, how about it? Little knife here, huh? No, nobody wants to kill him. The guy's going to have to commit suicide to get this whole thing. And how are you going to deal with this? You can't do it. But see, you have to understand. Let me show you the proof of this. A lot of people don't understand. Oh, that's all. When it was Passover, they were sitting around the table, and they said to Jesus, who is it that's going to do this? Who's going to betray you? Now, he didn't say, the fakakta over there with the red sweater on, this is the guy, and you ought to do something about it. He didn't say that. You know what he said? The one to whom I dip the sop. Okay? Now, the sop is when you took a piece of bread and dipped it in gravy. Look up when you go home the word sop, S-O-P, not sap. Sop, S-O-P. Look up the word sop in the dictionary, and it means to dip the gravy in bread, but it also means to receive a favor from one in a trusted position. Judas was the treasurer and the only one he could trust. there must be a Judas in every one of us that we can trust, who will betray us so that we will die to the flesh so we may rise up into that which is the mind of Christ. Huh? Hey, if you were there and you saw them going to crucify Jesus, if you're a real Christian, if you're a real person of God, you would have had to say, kill him, kill him, kill him, because it's the will of God. Because if you said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Remember there was a guy that said, don't do that. His name was Peter. And what did Jesus say to him? Get behind me, Satan. So the good guys were the guys that killed him. It was the evil ones who tried to stop him from being killed. Don't you see? Inside of you it is good that that which is the lower dies so the higher can live. It is that which is the evil which says, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't meditate, don't go within, don't do that. It's the evil. I'll show you just this last thing about the sun god, and I'll leave you some. How many, most of you have all gone to church in normal churches, right? And didn't they tell you in normal churches that God had Jesus killed? And where would the execution of Jesus take place? Calvary, was it? Outside of Jerusalem, wasn't it? On a hill, Golgotha, on a hill far away. You remember that? Let me show you something. Go to page 1008 in your little Bibles, the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 11. And I'm just about done. You with me on Revelation chapter 11? Okay, go to verse 8. What does it say? And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. How do I know? The Bible told me so. See, what does it mean, Sodom and Egypt? What did I tell you Egypt meant? The land of bondage. The land of bondage of the mind is Egypt. The land of bondage of the emotions is Sodom, and that's where that flesh must be crucified, in the midst of your emotions and your mind. That's when the Jesus will die and the Christ within you will rise up into new life. Huh? You see, Jesus was the sun god. That's why he's born on December the 20th. See, on December the 21st, real quick for those, on December the 21st, the sun goes through a constellation called Crux. It's the cross. It's the shortest day of the year. On December 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, it's called the winter solstice. After being crucified, the sun sits in the bowels of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Huh? On December the 25th, by the trajectory of the earth, the sun, the light of the world, is born. 30 years after his birth, Jesus entered into the water of John. 30 days after the sun is born on December the 25th, it enters into Aquarius, the water man. And then it rises up to consume the lamb and be the burnt offering, and the house of Aries, Passover, and summer comes to the earth. Be wise and understand what all of this means. You know, there's a beautiful thing in the Gospel of Thomas, the Acts of Thomas, and John, who is Jesus' most trusted, is in the story watching Jesus bleeding and goring on the cross, and he says, I can't take it, and he's crying, and he goes running up this hill, and he goes running into this cave. Now, this is written by Thomas, in the Acts of Thomas, about John, and John runs into the cave, and he sees Jesus standing there laughing. Whoa! Hey, Johnny, what are you doing, man? What's up? What do you mean, what's up? You see what? You're... And Jesus says to him, John, the things that they say I suffered, I did not suffer. And John went running out, walking down, took a look at the crucifixion, walked by and said, and I realized then that God did all of this symbolically to save men's souls. Read it! Oh, they wouldn't let it in the Bible. Read it. You can't find it sometimes. You can always find it in the book by Joseph Campbell. I want you to look at one last, this is the last scripture we do today, and we're over. 807. Am I right? It might be a 2, but I think it's 807. Matthew chapter 27. All right? Matthew chapter 27 and verse 45. Okay? I want you to look what I'm talking about, Jesus being the sun god, born on December 5th. And look what happens when he dies. Now, from the 6th hour, number 6 means consciousness, to the 9th hour, which means that which is the renewed mind, there was darkness over all the land. When the sun is killed, there is an eclipse. This silliness that we experience is because we don't understand crucifixion, we don't understand Passover, we don't understand resurrection. You have in the Bible only those books that were allowed by the church of the Dark Ages. And just remember this last thing that I'm leaving you with. Everything that you've learned from Christianity came out of a point of origin which history has titled the Dark Ages. Because nobody but the power structure was allowed to think. This is the new age of Christ and a Buddha and a Krishna. This is the new age of the sun. This is the new age of nature. This is the new age of woman. This is the new age of spirit. And you must think, and you must think for yourself. And come together with one another as you would, to think, not to agree. Nobody should agree. Not one should not agree with the other. It's not important that you agree. It's just important that you think and exchange and live in harmony with nature. Thank you very much for sharing this time with us and our little journey through the ancient times of Babylon and the cosmos and Christ. And may the true essence of Passover not elude you again. May you enter into the house, which is yourself. May you drive out all of the leaven, which is your thoughts. May you bring the fire, which is the solar energy, up to the Lamb, which is the pineal gland of the brain. And then may the angel of death pass over you in your house. And may there be a season of spring in your soul. Amen. Thank you. Bye-bye.